Hello everyone, welcome back to another Commander review for Magic the Gathering, still in the Champions of Kamigawa set. We're going to talk about one of the most broken, absurdly powerful commanders in the entire game of Commander. Kiki-Jiki, Mirror Breaker. I don't know if you heard of this card. It's pretty popular. It's just pretty popular, but it's a legendary Goblin Shaman. It's a 2/2. It has a mana value of 5 with 2 generic mana and 3 red mana, so those Devotion players out there, something to look forward to. It's got haste, which is alright, you know. And it has a tap ability that I guess goes good with haste. It says create a token that's a copy of target non-legendary creature you control. That token has haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the end step. Now, I'm sure there's no possible way that we could ever break this card with just one single other card. Not even possible. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is the card that has a lot of rules associated with it. So I'm going to just go through this as fast as I can to keep this video short. Try and follow as much as you can. A lot of these rules are self-explanatory, but I'm just going to go through them because that's part of the purpose of this whole series, is explaining how the commander works and then talking about some fun deck ideas to go with it. So, starting at the top, the token copies exactly what was printed on the original creature, except that the copy also has haste and nothing else, unless it's copying a creature that's a token or that's copying something else. See below. It doesn't copy whether the creature is tapped or untapped, whether it has any counters on it or auras equipments attached to it, or any non-copy effects that changed its power, toughness, types, color, and so on. Most notably, if the target creature isn't normally a creature, the copy won't be a creature. Whew! That's a lot right off the bat. That is a lot. Essentially, whenever you are making a token copy of something, just bear in mind that you are making a copy of whatever was originally printed on the piece of cardboard that you are copying. Now, there is a rule that talks about if we're going to copy things like shapeshifters or things that can become other things. But essentially, just remember, if you're going to copy something cool, you're going to copy whatever the base value of the cool thing is. The first one that comes to mind is Akroma, Angel of Wrath. I'm pretty sure that's the one where it's the mono white Akroma that's got all those keywords on it. It's like super powerful. You'll get the super powerful angel, all the keywords. It's very big, 8 mana value cost, all of that stuff that's originally printed on the card. However, it won't copy any of the +1/+1 counters that you put on the original Akroma. It won't copy the Sword of Feast and Famine that you equipped to Akroma. It won't copy the enchantment that gives Akroma Double Strike or Lifelink or whatever other keywords it doesn't already have. It just copies whatever the base value of that creature is. And then things like there's an artifact, something mirror. Oh, it's from Amonkhet. And the mirror can become a copy of a creature on the board or something like that. If you copy the artifact, it will be in its artifact form, and you'll have to pay the mana to make a copy of something else. So just bear that in mind. You always copy the base value of what the card is. And that includes tokens, you know. If the token is represented by a card, let's say, I mean, that's the best case scenario. If the copy is a penny, but that penny represents a 1/1 sapperling, and you copy that sapperling, you're going to make a 1/1 sapperling. You're going to make another coin, essentially. So you just copy whatever the base value of it is, not anything that's that's added to it. Alright, if the copied creature has a mana cost of X, if the copied creature has in its mana cost X is 0. Oh, there must be a little typo there. Has blank in its mana cost, X is 0. Any Hydras are a great example of this. Hydras usually will have colored mana pips and then X next to it or XX next to it. X will always equal 0. X only cares about when you are casting the spell. Once that spell is resolved, X will just go back to being 0. So X is always 0 unless it is being cast on the stack. And mana is being put into it. That's a side note, but you have to have mana put into the X when casting it. If a copied creature is copying something else, the token you create will use the copyable values of the target creature. In most cases, it will just be a copy of whatever that creature is copying. A great example of this are clone cards, shapeshifters, that when they enter the battlefield as something else. So in our last video, when we were talking about Kaiga, the Tide Star, one of the best decks for that, one of the popular ones on EDH Rec was clones. You played a lot of clone shapeshifters. They enter as Kaiga. If we were to go with that same logic and a clone was copying a Saproling token, I don't know why you would do that, but if a clone entered the battlefield as a Saproling token, and then you make a copy of the clone, that clone will then enter as something else. It could be the Saproling token, it could enter as a copy of the clone that is currently copying the Saproling token, therefore making it a Saproling token. It could enter the battlefield as a copy of Kiki-Jiki. Bear in mind, if you do that, the legend rule will most likely apply. Reading the card explains the card, but clone effects will simply just do what it says. 9 times out of 10, if you're going to copy a clone, you're going to have that clone enter as whatever the previous clone was already cloning to get the best value. That's a lot of gibberish. This is going to be a long video just about rules. It's going to be insane. If a copied creature is a token that isn't a copy of something else, the copy copies the original characteristics of that token as stated by the effect that created it. Again, if you take the 1/1 Saproling token and you copy it, you're going to make another 1/1 Saproling token, regardless of the original token having a trample counter, 9+1/+1 counters, an enchantment that gives it flying. Regardless of all the modified attributes of that 1/1 token, you'll just make a 1/1 token, because that's what it originally was. Any enters the battlefield abilities of the copied creature will trigger when the token enters the battlefield. Any as this permanent enters the battlefield, or this permanent enters the battlefield with abilities of the copied creature will also work. This one's pretty self-explanatory. We already kind of talked about this. Just remember, you have ETB effects, you have death trigger effects, just like with the clone deck. If you want to copy Kaiga or you want to copy Kiki-Jiki, and the legend rule kicks in and you have to sacrifice hopefully you're sacrificing the copy, not the original. You'll get whatever enter the battlefield or death triggers still apply. A great example of this would be evoke creatures or the Elder Giants from Theros. They have these abilities where they enter the battlefield. They are gonna die because of how their rules work, their rules text, but you'll still get the enters the battlefield trigger regardless. So that is cool to note. If another creature becomes a copy or enters the battlefield as a copy of the token, oh, my face is now blocking it. That creature will copy the creature card the token is copying, except it will also have haste. However, you won't sacrifice the new copy at the beginning of the next end step. A great example of this is Populate, which there's a tiny bit in red, so you could actually do some of this in mono red. And there are some cool things you can do with that, because if you want to make a copy of something big and powerful, you're only going to have it that one turn. Remember, Kiki-Jiki gives that creature haste, and at the beginning of the end step you need to sacrifice that token. But if you can make a copy of that token with Populate, then the newest version of that token will stay, because only the one Kiki-Jiki makes has to get sacrificed. Any other tokens are fine. They don't have to obey that rule. they may have to obey the rules of whatever made that token. If you want to make a, I mean, reading the card explains the card, but essentially, if you make a token outside of Kiki-Jiki's ability to make tokens, that token is safe from the sacrificing effect. And then lastly, if Kiki-Jiki's ability creates multiple tokens due to a replacement effect, such as the one on Doubling Season, you'll sacrifice each of them. Again, this goes back to the last rule. When you are looking at the sacrifice at the end step trigger, it only cares about tokens that Kiki-Jiki makes. Doubling Season replaces that by doubling the amount of tokens you make. So instead of making one token, you make two. Those both creatures are being made by Kiki-Jiki's effect, doubled through Doubling Season's replacement effect. It's still Kiki-Jiki that makes it. So both those tokens will have the sacrifice at the beginning of the end step. And I think finally the last card to really talk about this is Avenger of Zendikar, which is a green elemental. When it enters the battlefield, you make a bunch of plant tokens equal to the number of lands you control. If you were to make a copy of it with Kiki-Jiki, and you had a replacement effect like Doubling Season, you would make 2 Avenger of Zendikars. Each of those Avenger of Zendikars would have an enter the battlefield trigger, and they would make you a 0/1 plant for each land you controlled. And then the second Avenger of Zendikar would also do that. So then you would have all the plant tokens that the Avengers made. Only the Avengers have the sacrifice rule part on them because Kiki-Jiki made the Avenger tokens. The Avenger tokens made the plant tokens, and the Avengers don't care about sacrificing at the end step. So the plant tokens can stay. The Avenger tokens have to get sacrificed because they were made by Kiki-Jiki, which specifically says at the beginning of the end step, sacrifice them. However, you could just do that again on the next turn and make even more plants, and it's just absolutely wild. Very cool card. That's a lot of rules to talk about. Hopefully that all is clear to you. It's pretty simple when you play it out. The biggest thing to remember here is that it cannot be legendary creatures. It has to be non-legendary creatures. So don't try and make copies of your commander or other legendary creatures with this. You have to use other means to copy legendary creatures with Kiki. Oh, and I gotta get my mouse back here. Boop. Alright, card to synergize with Kiki-Jiki, Priest of Urabrask. I specifically avoided the 2-card infinite combo shenanigans that you can do with Kiki-Jiki in this video. It is so easy to go infinite with Kiki-Jiki because there are so many different mono red cards that will gain control of a creature and then untap it for the turn. If you play that, you copy it with Kiki-Jiki, and then you gain control of the Kiki-Jiki. You untap it, even though you already have control, you can still do that. You gain control of it, untap it, and then that one can then Kiki-Jiki can tap to copy the original again, make another token, untap Kiki-Jiki because of its ETB, and do it over and over and over and over again, and you make an army of hasty creatures, and you just win the game on the spot. It's super easy to go infinite with Kiki-Jiki, so I specifically tried to avoid the infinite combo cards in this video. Priest of Urabrask, still very powerful card to copy with Kiki-Jiki because it kind of turns Kiki-Jiki into a tap, add 3 mana, which is insane. The deck that I am building for Kiki-Jiki is actually going to be a Goblin Tribal deck. So it's not going to be as powerful as the combo decks that you usually would see Kiki-Jiki as, but still going to be fun, still going to be powerful. I mean, being able to make copies of Goblin Matron and get any Goblin you need from your deck is a very powerful tutoring engine. So, really cool. A popular deck idea on EDH Rec is treasure tokens. You want to make as many copies of creatures that get you treasure tokens that double your treasure token value. And then, of course, you want to have spells to utilize those treasure tokens with and just go crazy with it. Absolutely absurd. And then I was thinking about like you have to sacrifice this creature at the end step part of Kiki-Jiki for a janky, weird build around. So I started looking at creatures and things in mono red that cared about when creatures die. And I came across a lot of devils, and I kind of forgot about this. So I'm glad that I did this, because the devil tribe, or the devil creature type, cares about when creatures die. Most, if not all, devil tokens that you make have this ability that when they die, you can deal 1 damage to any target. So this is a devil tribal deck where you want to make as many devil tokens as you can, whether it's copying things like Spiteful Prankster, making an army of red devil creature tokens, and then having a sack engine like Goblin Bombardment, and just doing a ton of damage with a huge board of creatures. It's kind of a weird burn deck within the devil archetype, and I think it's very fun. And it fits this commander really beautifully, because at the end of the turn you need to sacrifice specifically that token. That fits perfectly with what devils want. So really cool, really fun deck archetype. And that is going to do it for Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker. This was a long video. There's a lot of rules for this card. At the end of the day, it's pretty simple. Just remember that when you're making copies of things, that there's a lot of rules that come into play with making a copy of something, because you're only ever copying the base value of that thing, but that thing might have ETB triggers, it might be copying something else, it might have death triggers. So it's just a lot of reminder text of like, don't forget the important basics of the game, but go ahead and make a copy of any creature you control, as long as it's not legendary, and go wild. Absolutely crazy target. I was gonna put 2 pricey as part of this commander's cost, like the weaknesses to this card, because for a while this card was actually monetarily expensive. I don't know what's happened, but when I was making these slides, I had pricey, but I was gonna change it to like money signs pricey instead of like the pricey I've done for the spirit dragons. But it's actually not that expensive. I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, for a single card it's like 10 or 11 bucks. That is still pretty expensive, but I was expecting this to be like a $30 or $40 card. So it's actually dropped a lot in price from what I originally remember it being. With that said though, still a very powerful commander. You can do a lot of infinite combos with this commander really easily, so it is a very heavy target on this commander's back, so be prepared for that. But all in all, really cool card, lots of fun stuff you can do with it. Even if you're doing something mild and silly with it, still very powerful. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any comments or questions, let me know in the comments section down below. Let me know if there's any deck ideas or card combos or synergies I didn't talk about that you want to bring up to the table for everyone to read. Really cool card, and yeah, I can't wait to get some more content of cards out to you guys. Things have been busy right now, but I am getting back on track to getting Magic the Gathering and video game content to you guys. So thanks again. Thank you guys so much for all your support, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!